So with that, we're going to start with our top 5 plays. And this is with Jamie Peebles. Thank you.
Hey everybody, good evening. Thanks for sticking around. We're going to jump right into this. I'm not going to do a whole bunch of intro. The short story here is my name's Jamie. I'm a cloud solution architect at Microsoft. And one of the things that we wanted to try and do is just make this real from a, how do I do it? Like, okay, great. We heard a lot of good things from Zach around what he's been investing in and some of the capabilities that are already in place. But let's talk a little bit about, how do we do this? And I've got a whole bunch of, I want to call it slideware because I want to move through this quickly. But we're going to try and keep this on more of a flip book kind of thing. If you've got questions, take them at the end. We can, I'll stick around for as long as you want. But then Steve's also got some closing demo that I want to make sure you guys see. So without further ado, here's 5 adoption scenarios that I think you should consider. The first one sort of tails off of the question that came earlier on, or a moment ago, which was, who's doing this in a big way? Customer-facing applications are one of the ways that you can adopt cloud. One of my favorite stories to talk about when we talk about getting some of the benefit that the cloud unlocks around speed, scale, and economics are the work or the efforts that were undertaken by the Department of Veterans Affairs, where access to care, where any vet can go and figure out what's the wait time for a specific service that they need. That's active today. It's running in the cloud. It's a 100% cloud-focused and cloud-delivered application. There are certainly others that are working on a smaller scale than that. But again, those forward-facing web kind of applications are a really great place to start and get some value. Dev test is another one. I saw some really interesting statistics that I'll share with you guys. But this is sort of the first step in a cloud journey from a simplicity standpoint. The data point that I like here, 50% of all infrastructure is spent on non-production workloads. Now, I don't have a source for this, but I'll tell you that passes the sniff test for me in a big way. And when you start thinking about what does this look like, the opportunity to do development and test is in and of itself a spiky workload, but we purchase that infrastructure at the top level and that never moves. And so how do I account for that unused capacity? It's effectively wasted. Wouldn't it be great if you could take a dynamic workload such as dev test and map it to a dynamic capability matrix, which is the cloud? One of the really interesting parts of Azure is this capability called Dev Test Labs. I don't know if anybody's familiar with this. This isn't something that I think we do a good job talking about at Microsoft. But this is effectively a governance layer that sits in front of the cloud so that you can do some relatively benign things to save a ton of money. When we were listening to some of the guys that are up here earlier, Daryl specifically was talking about how do I do automation and control and such. This is a really easy way to just build that in. Let me turn my dev machines off every night at 7 p.m. And if I need to, I can write some additional automation scripts, but again, it makes it easy to do things like that. Another one of the easy sort of high-value pop activities that you can put in the cloud and people should take a look at is business continuity. When we talk about business continuity on sort of a high level, you could sort of break that into 3 pieces: high availability, backup, and disaster recovery. And there are 3 mutually exclusive concepts that are very complementary. There was an executive order that went out. This is verbiage from a NIST publication. I won't read to you on the slide, but effectively says that every agency and every workload should have the ability to recover from a disaster event. When you look at how much this costs, when we talk about the benefits of the cloud, speed, cost savings, et cetera, there's real dollars here for every single workload. If we sort of divorce that concept of DR into the 3 pieces, you've got high availability on the left, which is a single data center with multiple workloads. That's resilience that most people understand. We talk about DR, how do I put those into separate facilities? So the Houston example that was given earlier. And then finally, backup. All 3 of these workloads can play in a cloud environment. and not necessarily have to all play. The DR part and the backup part are two really good ways to start talking about controlling cost, complexity, and also compliance. And what do I do to reduce or increase those necessary parameters as need be? Here's a simplified, huge disclaimer, right? Simplified example architecture on where you can fit some of those pieces. Let's take a simple application on the left-hand side with a web tier and a database backend, but let's put a load balancer in front of it. And that way, if my on-prem traffic continues to function, no problem, everything's business as usual. I'm running my backup in the cloud, so I'm getting my data off-site, number one rule in backup. And then also doing some of this replication stuff that Zach was talking about, the site recovery piece, where we can replicate that entire architecture to the right-hand side into the cloud. This is your migration strategy or your one-way migration or one-way DR, I think was what Zach referred to it. But this is another really easy way to meet that executive order and also get some significant value out of the cloud. Really, really easy, really straightforward exercise. This data center transformation is a little bit of a bigger bite, right? A couple of factoids, just some numbers that put a point on this. The one that I like here is 80% of global IT budgets are spent on maintenance. Or you think about a data center, what is it? It's an air conditioning contract and a maintenance contract. You build one of these, you're going to be married to a lot of different vendors, and they're not computer vendors, right? But people want to get out of their data centers, and there's good reasons to do this. So there's an integration exercise, there's a migration exercise, and then I actually wrote this down from Saeed. The cloud is the backbone of the modern experience. I thought that was brilliant. Right? This is where we start looking at how do I start to decouple some of the stuff that's on-prem and move it to the cloud using some of the technology we just talked about, but also taking advantage of some of the benefits that the cloud has, and then moving to some of those workloads that we were talking about with Zach. The SAP thing I think is significant. I'm not an SAP guy, but I understand enough to recognize that when you go out and you have to buy that kind of hardware and you can rent it in the cloud, there's huge benefits in looking at that. It's not an all you got to do, because anytime anybody starts a sentence with all you got to do, it's going to take 3 times longer and involve 4 trips to Home Depot. So it's not an all you got to do is move SAP to the cloud, but there's some very real benefits to doing that. And then ultimately, you can start taking advantage of some really good built-in capacities from a hybrid standpoint. Full disclaimer, I'm not a licensing guy, I'm a tech guy. But this one benefit of running Windows in the cloud, if you're doing this today and you don't know about this hybrid use benefit, go find out. You can save 40% today. This is the money slide that I would encourage everyone to be aware of. Finally, if we start thinking about some of these workloads that we can put into Azure, right? We've talked about data center modernization. One of the big workloads in data centers, and specifically some of the customers that I work with, is this virtual desktop infrastructure. Steve's got some demos and some really cool stuff that he can show on how to make VDI in the cloud a real thing. And I think, if I'm not going to steal your thunder, he might have some cool announcements that nobody knows about yet, or only a few if you've been paying attention at home.
Yeah.